He called me fat and invisible. Then I saw him pick her up in a white Rolls-Royce, so I exposed them. He stopped looking at me months ago. No eye contact, no conversation, just cold indifference, like I'd become part of the furniture. One morning, I gathered the courage to ask if we could talk about us, about our marriage that was falling apart. He didn't even look up from his phone, just muttered those 3 words. "You're fat and invisible." I stayed quiet, swallowed the pain. But that afternoon, everything changed. I saw him pick up a younger woman outside a restaurant, in a white Rolls-Royce I'd never seen before. Something in me snapped. Not anger, not even hurt anymore. Just cold, calculated clarity. I followed them. I took photos. I gathered evidence. And I waited. At our family dinner that weekend, the big gathering with his parents, siblings, everyone, I played the footage on the TV. No one touched their food after that. This is the story of how I went from invisible to unforgettable. Subscribe for more stories of exposure, revenge, and taking back power. Chapter 1. Invisible. When silence becomes your only language. My name is Catherine Morgan. I'm 42 years old, and for the last 6 months of my 18-year marriage, I was invisible. Not metaphorically invisible, actually invisible. My husband, Richard Morgan, successful real estate developer, pillar of the Los Angeles community, beloved son and brother, looked through me like I wasn't there. I'd speak. He wouldn't respond. I'd enter a room. He wouldn't acknowledge me. I'd try to start a conversation. He'd leave. For 6 months, I existed as a ghost in my own home, until the morning he finally spoke to me. And what he said changed everything. This is the story of how I stopped being invisible, and how I made sure everyone saw exactly who Richard really was. Let me start at the beginning. Richard and I met when I was 24 and he was 26. I was working as a paralegal. He was just starting his real estate business. We met at a mutual friend's party, one of those LA rooftop affairs with too many beautiful people and not enough substance. But Richard was different, or so I thought. He was ambitious but kind, driven but grounded. He pursued me with intensity, flowers, handwritten notes, surprise dates. We married after 2 years, had our son, Michael, when I was 28. Our daughter, Sophie, came 2 years later. The first decade was good, maybe not perfect, but good. Richard's business took off. We moved into a beautiful house in Brentwood, joined the right clubs, knew the right people. I stopped working when Michael was born. Richard insisted, "I make enough for both of us. The kids need you at home." I didn't fight it. It seemed like the right choice at the time. The weight gain started gradually. Pregnancy pounds that never quite left. Stress eating when the kids were young and demanding. Approaching 40 and noticing how my metabolism had changed. By the time I was 40, I'd gained about 50 pounds from my wedding day. Size 4 to size 14. My clothes didn't fit the same. My face looked different. My body was different. Richard noticed. Oh, he noticed. The comments started small. "Maybe we should both eat healthier. The gym has a great program for women your age." My business partner's wife lost 30 pounds on this diet. Then they got sharper. "You're letting yourself go. I'm embarrassed to bring you to company events. Can't you at least try?" I tried. God, I tried. Every diet, every workout program, every promise that this time would be different. But life kept happening. Kids' activities, household management, aging parents, stress, life. And Richard kept noticing. 6 months ago, something shifted. Richard stopped commenting on my weight. He just stopped seeing me entirely. He'd come home from work and walk past me like I wasn't there. Wouldn't respond when I spoke. Wouldn't make eye contact at dinner. Wouldn't acknowledge my existence. At first I thought he was stressed. Work problems, financial pressure, midlife crisis. But weeks turned into months, and the silence became oppressive. I tried everything. Cooked his favorite meals, dressed up, lost 10 pounds through sheer desperate willpower. Tried to initiate conversations about anything. His day, the kids, our plans, nothing. Just cold, complete indifference. It was like living with a stranger who decided I didn't exist. The morning of October 8th, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. Richard was at the breakfast table scrolling through his phone. Expensive suit, Rolex watch, the picture of success. I sat down across from him. Richard, we need to talk. No response. Didn't even look up. Richard, please, we need to talk about us. About what's happening in this marriage. Still nothing. Are you even going to acknowledge me? He finally looked up. Not at me. Through me. And in a voice completely devoid of emotion, he said, "You're fat and invisible." Then he stood up, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out the door. I sat there for 10 minutes, those 4 words echoing in my head. You're fat and invisible. Not I'm unhappy. Not I want a divorce. Not even I don't love you anymore. Just, you're fat and invisible. Like I was an object, a thing, something that had failed to meet specifications and was therefore no longer worth noticing. Something broke in me that morning. Not in a dramatic, screaming, crying breakdown way, just a quiet snap, like the last thread of a rope finally giving way. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was clear, coldly, perfectly clear. Richard thought I was invisible. Fine. Invisible people can see things others don't notice. And that afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I went to Richard's office building downtown. I didn't go inside, just parked across the street and waited. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Confirmation of an affair, maybe. Evidence that there was a reason, any reason, for the way he'd been treating me. At 3:30 p.m., Richard walked out of the building. But he didn't go to his usual black Mercedes. He walked to a white Rolls-Royce Phantom parked at the curb. A white Rolls-Royce I'd never seen before. That wasn't registered to our household. That cost probably $500,000. He got in the driver's seat and drove to a trendy restaurant in West Hollywood. I followed him, staying back, invisible. He parked, went inside, came out 10 minutes later with a woman. She was young, mid-20s maybe, tall, thin, blonde, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room. Everything I wasn't. Richard opened the passenger door for her. She got in, laughing at something he said. He kissed her, not a peck, a real kiss, before walking around to the driver's seat. And they drove away. In a white Rolls-Royce that my husband somehow owned without my knowledge. I followed them. Not because I had a plan. Just because something in me needed to see where this went. They drove to Malibu, to a beachfront property I'd never seen. Richard pulled into the driveway like he owned the place. Because I realized he probably did own the place. They went inside. I parked down the street and watched through my phone's camera, zoomed in. I took photos, video, timestamps, everything. I watched them through the floor-to-ceiling windows, drinking wine, laughing, him touching her waist. Her kissing his neck, all the affection I hadn't received in 6 months, all the attention I'd been starving for, given freely to someone else. I sat in my car until it was dark, until they closed the curtains, until I had more evidence than I needed. Then I drove home, parked in our driveway, walked into our house. Richard wasn't home yet, of course. The kids were with my sister for the day, a lucky coincidence that meant I didn't have to pretend everything was normal. I uploaded all the photos and videos to my computer, backed them up on 3 different drives, made sure I had copies that couldn't be deleted or lost, and then I started planning. Chapter 2. The Investigation. When invisibility becomes your superpower. Over the next 10 days, I became a ghost in my own marriage, but this time, by choice. I was perfectly pleasant, made dinner, did laundry, managed the household, smiled at Richard when he walked past me without acknowledgement, but I was also documenting, investigating, preparing. I went through our financial records, the ones I could access online. I found accounts I didn't know existed, transfers to a separate bank, payments to a property management company. Richard had been siphoning money from our joint accounts into his own private accounts for over a year, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Malibu beach house was in his name only. Purchased 8 months ago for $3.2 million, hidden from me completely. I hired a private investigator, not to confirm the affair, I already had proof of that, but to find out exactly how deep this went. His name was Marcus Chen, former LAPD detective, now running his own investigation firm. Discreet, professional, expensive. I need to know everything, I told him. How long the affair has been going on. If there have been others, what assets my husband has hidden, everything. That's going to take some time. And it won't be cheap. I have access to a credit card he doesn't monitor. Use it. I don't care about the cost. I need ammunition. Marcus delivered. Within a week, he had a comprehensive report. The affair had been going on for 14 months. The woman's name was Brooke Patterson, 26 years old, former model turned lifestyle influencer. She'd met Richard at a charity gala. Richard had set her up in a luxury apartment in Century City, paid her rent, her car lease, her shopping bills, given her jewelry, taken her on trips to Hawaii, Paris, Dubai, trips he'd told me were business conferences. But Brooke wasn't the first. There had been at least 2 others in the past 5 years. Shorter affairs, same pattern, young, thin, expensive. Richard had been living a double life for years, and he'd been financing it with our money that was supposed to be for our family, our kids' college funds, our future. But the most damaging discovery was about the business. Richard's real estate company was in trouble, serious trouble. He'd made several bad investments, over-leveraged properties. The market had turned. He was bleeding money. The beach house, the Rolls-Royce, Brooke's lifestyle. All of it was being funded by taking on more debt, mortgaging properties, using company funds inappropriately. We were months away from financial collapse, and I'd had no idea. Because Richard had hidden everything from me, kept me in the dark, made me invisible so I wouldn't ask questions. Marcus handed me a flash drive. Everything is on here. Financial records, affair documentation, timeline of deception. It's enough to destroy him in divorce court. Divorce court isn't where I want to destroy him, I said. The family dinner was scheduled for October 18th, Richard's parents' 50th wedding anniversary. A big gathering at their Pasadena estate. Parents, siblings, spouses, kids, extended family, at least 30 people. Richard's family was old money, established, image-obsessed. Reputation was everything. This dinner was going to be filmed. A professional videographer hired to document the celebration. Formal speeches planned. The whole production. Richard had told me weeks ago that I wasn't expected to speak. My brother will give the toast. You just need to show up and look presentable. Look presentable, as if that was my only value. I smiled and agreed. Of course. Whatever you think is best. I spent the week before the dinner preparing. Not my appearance, though I did buy a new dress, had my hair done, lost a few more pounds just for the satisfaction of it. No, I was preparing my presentation. I took all the evidence, photos, videos, financial records, and edited them into a 12-minute video, set to music, professional looking, impossible to ignore. I practiced my speech, short, direct, devastating. I contacted Richard's business partners and investors, anonymously, gave them a heads up that they might want to look into the company's finances, and I prepared myself emotionally for what I was about to do, for the explosion that was coming, for the end of the life I'd known. I was ready. On the morning of the dinner, Richard actually spoke to me. First time in days. Wear the blue dress. And for God's sake, try to look decent. Of course, I said sweetly. I wouldn't want to embarrass you. He didn't catch the edge in my voice. Why would he? I was invisible, remember? The Chapter 3, The Exposure. When the invisible woman becomes unforgettable. We arrived at his parents' house at 6 p.m. The estate was beautiful. Sprawling lawn, elegant architecture, views of the San Gabriel Mountains. Family members were already there. Richard's parents, Eleanor and James, his brother David and David's wife, his sister Patricia and her husband, cousins, nieces, nephews, everyone dressed in their finest. Richard immediately left my side to greet people, network, schmooze, play the role of successful son and brother. I made small talk, smiled, played the role of dutiful wife. No one seemed to notice anything wrong. Why would they? They'd never really looked at me anyway. Dinner was served at 7 p.m. We all sat at an enormous table under a tent in the garden. Candlelight, fine china, multiple courses, the videographer filming everything. It was beautiful, perfect. Exactly the kind of event Eleanor had planned for months. I waited. After the main course, David stood to give the toast. A sentimental speech about his parents' 50 years together, about love and commitment and family values. Everyone applauded. Eleanor wiped tears from her eyes. James beamed. Then Richard stood. "I'd like to add something," he said. Confident, charismatic, everyone's attention on him. He talked about legacy, about building something that lasts, about honoring the values his parents taught him. I almost laughed. The hypocrisy was staggering. When he finished, everyone applauded again. More tears, more beaming. "Actually," I said, standing, "I'd like to say something too." Richard looked at me, surprised, annoyed. "Catherine, this isn't—" "It'll just take a moment," I said, my voice sweet as honey. "I promise." Eleanor nodded graciously. "Of course, dear." I walked to where the videographer had set up a large screen for displaying family photos throughout the evening. I'd earlier convinced him to let me add a surprise slideshow to the evening's entertainment. "I've put together a little presentation," I announced to the room, "about marriage, about what it really takes to make a relationship last 50 years, or in my case, 18. I clicked the remote. The screen flickered to life. The first image was of me and Richard on our wedding day. Young, happy, in love. 18 years ago, Richard and I got married, I narrated. We promised to love and honor each other, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. The images continued, our kids as babies, family vacations, ordinary moments of an ordinary marriage. Richard was watching now, confused. The room was attentive but not alarmed, just another sentimental slideshow. But somewhere along the way, I continued, Richard decided I wasn't worth loving anymore. He told me this morning, actually. He said, and I quote, "You're fat and invisible." The room went silent. Uncomfortable glances. Richard's face was turning red. "Dad," David said quietly. "Maybe we should—" "No," Eleanor said firmly. "Let her finish." On the slideshow changed. Now it showed financial records, highlighted in red. While telling me I was invisible, I continued, voice steady, Richard was spending hundreds of thousands of our dollars on his mistress, Brooke Patterson, 26 years old. Here she is. Photos of Brooke appeared on screen. Professional modeling shots. Richard bought her a white Rolls-Royce Phantom. Here's the registration. He also bought this beach house in Malibu. $3.2 million. Never told me about it. Images of the beach house, the deed, the mortgage documents. He's taken her to Paris, Dubai, Hawaii. Trips he told me were business conferences. Here are the travel records. Hotel reservations for 2. Patricia gasped. James was staring at Richard with an expression I couldn't read. Eleanor's face was stone. And then, the video started playing. Footage of Richard picking up Brooke outside the restaurant, getting into the Rolls-Royce, driving to the beach house, footage of them inside, visible through the windows, kissing, touching, intimate in ways Richard hadn't been with me in years. Richard has been living a double life, I said, my voice echoing in the silent garden. While I raised our children, managed our household, and tried desperately to save our marriage, he was building a secret life with someone else. More financial documents appeared. But it gets worse. Richard's business is failing. He's hidden massive debts, misused company funds. We're on the verge of bankruptcy, and he's been hiding all of this from me, keeping me invisible so I wouldn't ask questions. I turned to face the table, to face Richard, whose face had gone from red to white. So yes, Eleanor, James, you raised a son who knows about commitment. He's committed to lying, to cheating, to stealing from his own family, to emotionally abusing his wife for 18 years. The silence was absolute. Then Eleanor stood, walked directly to Richard, and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed across the garden like a gunshot. "How dare you?" she said, her voice shaking with fury. "How dare you disgrace this family? How dare you treat your wife this way? How dare you stand here on our anniversary and talk about values while living a lie?" "Mom, I can explain," Richard started. "Don't," James said, standing as well. "Don't say another word. You've said enough, done enough." Richard looked around the table, at his siblings, whose faces showed shock and disgust, at his extended family, who were staring at him like they'd never seen him before, at the videographer, who was still filming everything. Then he looked at me. "You vindictive bitch," he hissed. You just destroyed my life. No, I said calmly. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone could see it. Richard left, stormed out of the garden, grabbed his keys, and drove off. The dinner was over. Ruined. Eleanor was crying. James was on the phone with his lawyer. Guests were quietly leaving, not sure what to say or do. Patricia came up to me. Catherine, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. What are you going to do? Divorce him. Take him for everything. Make sure my kids are provided for. And never be invisible again. David approached next. The business stuff? Is it really that bad? Worse. Here's a copy of everything. I handed him a flash drive. You might want to distance yourself and warn any investors you know. He took it, nodding grimly. Thank you for telling us. Even like this. Eleanor was the last to approach. Her perfect anniversary ruined. Her son exposed as a fraud. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I know this isn't how you wanted tonight to go. No, she said. It's not. But you told the truth, and I respect that. I wish I'd known. I wish we'd seen what he was doing to you. I was invisible, I said. That was the point. Well, she said, taking my hand. You're not invisible anymore. The next week was chaos. The video went viral. Of course it did. Someone at the dinner, probably one of the younger cousins, had filmed my presentation on their phone and posted it online. Within 48 hours, millions of people had watched Woman Exposes Cheating Husband at Family Dinner. It was on every social media platform, featured in news articles, discussed on talk shows. Fat and invisible wife gets ultimate revenge, was one headline. Public shaming or justified exposure? Asked another. The think pieces were endless. Some people praised me for standing up for myself. Others criticized me for airing private matters publicly. I didn't care. I hadn't done it for strangers on the internet. I'd done it for me. Richard's business partners were furious. An emergency audit revealed worse financial mismanagement than even Marcus had uncovered. Richard was forced out of his own company. Legal action was threatened. Possibly criminal charges for misuse of funds. The beach house was seized by creditors. The Rolls-Royce repoed. The hidden accounts frozen. Brooke disappeared from Richard's life the moment the money dried up. No surprise there. Richard moved into a small apartment in Koreatown. Started working at a buddy's construction firm. Lost most of his friends. Became persona non grata in the social circles he'd valued so much. Meanwhile, I filed for divorce. With Marcus's evidence, I got primary custody of the kids, the house, and a very favorable settlement. Eleanor helped pay my legal fees. Consider it a small apology for raising a son who treated you this way, she said. The kids struggled with everything, obviously. Finding out about their father's affair, watching their family implode publicly, dealing with classmates who'd seen the viral video. But they also saw their mother stand up for herself, fight back, refuse to be treated as invisible. Michael, now 14, said to me one day, Mom, I get why you did it. Dad was being awful to you. I'm glad you showed everyone. Sophie, 12, was more conflicted. I wish you didn't have to do it that way. It was so public. I know, I said. And I'm sorry you got caught in the middle, but sometimes the only way to stop being invisible is to make noise, to make people see. Are you happy now? She asked. I thought about it. I'm not happy exactly, but I'm free. And that's more important. Epilogue. A year after the dinner, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference in San Diego. Tell us, the interviewer asked, do you regret exposing your husband the way you did? So publicly? No, I said without hesitation. For 18 years, I let him make me feel small, unworthy, invisible. I let him control the narrative of our marriage. That night, I took the narrative back. Some people say you should have handled it privately, through lawyers, through therapy. Some people, I said, have never been made to feel invisible by someone who promised to love them. They've never been told they're worthless because they gained weight. They've never watched their partner live a secret life while treating them like they don't exist. I leaned forward. Richard didn't just cheat on me. He psychologically abused me, made me doubt my worth, stole from our family. And he thought he could get away with it because I was too beaten down to fight back. So you fought back. I did. And yes, it was public. Yes, it was dramatic. But you know what? It worked. I got my power back, I got my voice back, and I stopped being invisible. And today, I'm 43, single, living in the same house Richard tried to hide assets to keep. My kids are adjusting. Therapy helps. I've lost some weight, gained some back, lost it again. My body fluctuates, and that's okay, because I've learned that my worth isn't tied to my size. I'm not invisible anymore. Not to my family, not to myself. And anyone who tries to make me invisible again, they'll learn what Richard learned. The invisible woman sees everything, and when she finally speaks, everyone listens. The people still recognize me sometimes. "You're the woman from that viral video," they say. Some judge, some celebrate, some just stare. I don't care. I'm visible now. For better or worse, I'm seen, and I'll never be invisible again. The end.